Much fascinating stuff. Let me bring in Connecticut Democratic Congressman Joe Courtney, who serves on the Education and Labor Committee, and Kevin Hassett, an Economic Policy Director with the American Enterprise Institute, and now an advisor to the Romney campaign. Good to see both of you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning.
Congressman, let me start with you because you introduced the legislation to prevent interest rates on student loans from doubling on July 1st. Tell me where that stands right now. Does it have bipartisan support? Is it going to pass?
Well, a few minutes ago, we picked up our 137th co-sponsor, which is the good news. Unfortunately, it is so far only on the Democratic side in terms of co-sponsorship, which, if you go back to 2007, when we passed that rate cut that the correspondent described, it was actually a very bipartisan effort. We had 77 House Republicans who voted for the College Cost Reduction Act, a couple dozen senators, Republican senators, and George W. Bush, to his credit, signed it into law. And you know, it was, I think, an attempt to try and stop the wave of rising debt, which, again, your story, I think, showed chapter and verse, is really a huge challenge for middle-class families. I was glad to hear that Mr. Romney came out and supported the president's proposal for a one-year fix, and hopefully, you know, we're going to start picking up some momentum on an issue, really, which should unite all Americans. This should not be a partisan issue.
Well, let me play that sound from yesterday. This is Mitt Romney throwing his support behind it.
I fully support the effort to extend the low interest rate on student loans. There was some concern that that would expire halfway through the year, and I support extending the temporary relief on interest rates for students, in part because of the extraordinarily poor conditions in the job market.
Congressman, the White House then called Romney's new support for an extension inconsistent with his endorsement of the Ryan budget, which would slash Pell Grants and allow student loan rates to double. What do you think?
Well, there's no question that I think as people look at the Ryan budget closer and see that, in fact, the White House is correct. That budget plan assumes the higher rate, 6.8%, and does hit one of the real workhorse programs for low-income families to pay for college. About 9 million students use Pell Grants, which is, again, an actual grant to help kids without creating debt to pay for college. You know, that is really unconscionable, really, given, again, the challenges that young people face trying to, again, upgrade their talents, which has really become almost mandatory right now in terms of the workforce challenges that young people face when they're entering the workplace and the workforce.
Mr. Hassett, as an economist and as someone who has supported Mitt Romney, were you glad that he threw his support behind this? Does it make economic sense?
Yeah, and I commend the congressman. I think he's right that in the past this has been something that people of both parties could come together on, and I would hope that that'll happen soon on this one as well. The fact is, you know, I couldn't have gone to college if I didn't have student loans, and right now recent college graduates have pretty much the worst job market that we've ever seen going back to the Great Depression for new graduates. Right now it's about 50% of them that are either under or unemployed, and they just don't have the money to pay for these student loans. And the fact is that bankruptcy law is really, really harsh towards student loans. You know, people who have student debt are treated almost like felons. And so there's no way out for people that start to have trouble with this, and it's absolutely right to have some relief come forward right now.
Would you be surprised if it didn't go through?
Yeah, I'll be surprised if it doesn't go through.
So it seems to make political sense for both sides, and it is kind of interesting, isn't it, Congressman, because we often talk about how in the political silly season it's very difficult for both sides to come together. In fact, it may have the opposite effect right now in your case, right?
It should, because, again, this is a program which has really transformed people's lives. I mean, there's about 7 million kids today that use the Stafford Student Loan Program, but there are tens of millions who are people who remember the Stafford Student Loan Program as really, you know, the avenue that really created their success in life. So this has great political power, tremendous political power. Again, I don't want to overemphasize the kumbaya moment we're in right now. I mean, we frankly need to get some movement from the Speaker and from Mr. McConnell in the Senate to really get some traction in getting people to work together. I mean, the clock is ticking, 67 days to when that rate increase goes through. We have financial aid offices in colleges that are already putting the warning flags up for incoming students and for kids who are planning for next year. I mean, we really need to move on this, and hopefully the Speaker heard Mr. Romney's comments and is really going to now get his folks focused on coming up with a solution.
Connecticut Congressman Joe Courtney, thanks so much for being our guest, and Kevin
Thanks,
Hassett
Chris.
of the American Enterprise Institute, thanks to you as well.